On this Tuesday night, Israel's deadly airstrike on aid workers in Gaza. The 7 people, including a Canadian-American, killed while delivering essential food to Palestinians.
You do begin to wonder if there is not a policy of targeted killings.
What it means to charities trying to prevent famine, plus the worldwide outrage at Israel. New testimony at the foreign interference inquiry.
I didn't see them.
What an Ontario MP did say about Chinese students' bus to his nomination meeting. The threat of tornadoes hovers over millions of Americans.
Those might be a tornado.
The powerful storms and the damage already done. And shooting star. The rise of Caitlin Clark, one of the greatest women's college basketball players ever.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The situation in Gaza has become more dire than ever. The Israeli army has killed humanitarian workers delivering food to Palestinians at risk of famine. And aid groups say Israel has now made it impossible to operate safely in Gaza. These are the people who were killed. All worked with World Central Kitchen, a charity. It calls them heroes. 4 relief workers, a Palestinian, Australian, Pole, and dual U.S.-Canadian citizen, Jacob Flickinger, plus 3 members of the security team from the UK. One of their vehicles, clearly marked, pierced through the roof. 2 other vehicles were hit and incinerated. The charity says it coordinates its every move with the Israeli military, and the convoy was on a road they were told was safe. Israel's prime minister calls the strikes tragic and unintentional, but says this happens in war. Canada's foreign affairs minister posted that she's horrified and condemned the strikes.
We are heartbroken for the families and for the organization that has been putting people in harm's way to counter the extraordinarily devastating humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza right now.
Israel, already accused of restricting food to Palestinians, is now being blamed for cutting off another lifeline. Redmond Shannon has our top story tonight.
From inside one of the vehicles, it's clear why the aid workers stood little chance. From above another, the World Central Kitchen logo is clear to see. What is unclear is why Israel would hit an aid convoy, especially since the charity says it had been coordinating movements with Israel's military. World Central Kitchen says the team had just dropped off 100 tons of food in a warehouse in central Gaza. Then all 3 vehicles were hit, spread out over more than 2 kilometres. One of the aid workers was a dual Canadian-US citizen.
The beautiful, fragrant, aromatic rice.
Alongside them, an Australian, a Polish citizen and a Palestinian. The other 3 were British. The charity says it has provided 42 million meals to the people of Gaza during the 6-month conflict.
We're asking Israel to investigate what happened urgently because clearly there are questions that need to be answered.
Australia expects full accountability for the deaths of aid workers, which is completely unacceptable.
Almost 200 Palestinian aid workers have already been killed in the conflict, the vast majority with the UN's Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA.
So many innocent humanitarian aid workers have been hit by the Israelis to the point where you do begin to wonder if there is not a policy of targeted killings of aid workers.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the killings were unintentional, but that this, quote, happens in wartime.
We will be opening a probe to examine this serious incident further. This will help us reduce the risk of such an event from occurring again.
World Central Kitchen has now paused its operations in Gaza, and its latest ship carrying food aid to the Strip has turned back to Cyprus. Meanwhile, UNRWA says Israel blocked one of its aid convoys from reaching northern Gaza on Tuesday. Donna?
Redmond Shannon in London, thank you. Thousands of Israelis were already furious with their prime minister, and tonight they marched to his residence in Jerusalem. Police struggled to contain the crowds. They're angry about a range of issues, including Benjamin Netanyahu's failure to get more hostages in Gaza released, failure to end the war, and they are demanding he resign. The U.S., Israel's biggest ally, provides it with billions of dollars worth of military aid and weapons, including the ones used in Gaza. A White House spokesperson says the Biden administration is outraged by the Israeli strike on aid workers. And though President Biden has repeatedly warned Israel to protect civilians, it seems to fall on deaf ears. Joel Senick reports.
Here we are, and we'll come back tomorrow and the day after until you are okay.
A pledge to feed those in crisis around the world, including in Gaza.
Hey, this is Zoe and Chef Olivier. We're at the Jerusalem kitchen.
This video taken from the World Central Kitchen's operations in the besieged Palestinian territory. The woman on the left, one of 7 victims in a fatal Israeli airstrike. World Central Kitchen is based out of this office building here in Washington, D.C. They declined our request for an interview on Tuesday, but provided a statement saying they are heartbroken and appalled by the airstrike.
The team of World Central Kitchen this morning were able to deliver 8 trucks.
The charity was founded by celebrity chef Jose Andres, who posted on social media that the Israeli government needs to stop indiscriminate killing and stop using food as a weapon. President Biden called Andreas to share his condolences, but the White House says Israel has not crossed a red line.
The more violent it gets for humanitarian aid workers, the less likely it is that they're going to be willing to take those risks, which means it's more likely that the people of Gaza are going to just suffer all the more.
This incident is different because it's come after many warnings. The United States has said from the beginning how you fight this matters.
Middle East analyst Laura Blumenfeld doesn't believe the U.S. will pull its support for Israel's offensive over the fatal strike, but says it could be close to doing so.
Benjamin Netanyahu ran on being Mr. Security. Part of keeping people secure is being smart, not only strong, but smart. This just looks stupid.
U.S. officials are headed to the Middle East this week, where the world will now watch and see if Monday night's strike marks a defining moment in the conflict. Joel Senick, Global News, Washington.
Here in Canada, the Prime Minister is promising more money to address the housing crisis, including a new $6 billion infrastructure fund. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau claims his government is cutting red tape to fast-track construction. But as Mackenzie Gray reports, nothing can happen unless cities, provinces and territories agree.
The Liberals' latest housing pitch aims squarely at the Premier's.
We're not just going to put this money on the table, wash our hands of the issue and walk away. We're going to insist that our partners make certain kinds of changes that make it easier and faster to build homes in this country.
The money and the changes are substantial. If the Premiers want access to $5 billion worth of federal housing funds, they'll need to force municipalities to change things like zoning rules, to allow fourplexes as a right to increase density. Municipal development fees must be frozen for 3 years, and provinces will have to pass new laws to implement measures from the Liberals' proposed home buyers and renters' Bill of Rights.
This is how we'll make it fairer for younger generations who feel like they're falling behind because housing costs are too high.
A sentiment shared by the Premier of Ontario, but Doug Ford doesn't agree on the solution. He's against the cornerstone of the Liberal plan, allowing anybody to build a fourplex.
It's off the table for us. We're going to build homes, single-dwelling homes, town homes. That's what we're going to focus on.
An uncooperative Ontario will lead to tough negotiations with Ottawa. But while those take place, housing and affordability continues to hit all-time highs. A new report from RBC says the average Canadian needs to pay nearly 64% of their salary to own a home. And in Vancouver, Canada's most unaffordable market, that rises to 106%.
We've seen a sharp deterioration of affordability during the pandemic, pretty much across the board.
But it's not just a housing shortage increasing prices. The Prime Minister admitting his government's immigration policy pushed housing demand out of control.
Whether it's temporary foreign workers or whether it's international students in particular that have grown at a rate far beyond what Canada has been able to absorb.
Experts say any changes on either the supply or demand side of housing will take at least 2 years to make an impact on it, one that's sorely needed, with Canada's federal housing agency saying new construction needs to triple from current levels.
Okay, Mackenzie, thanks. The public inquiry into foreign interference heard today from a Toronto MP, Han Dong, who, according to sources, is alleged to have benefited from Chinese support. Those allegations were first reported by Global News last spring. Dong has denied China ever helped him and has sued Global News and individual reporters. That lawsuit remains unresolved. David Aiken reports on how the commission zeroed in on the threat from China and how intelligence officials warned of the Chinese government's tactics.
Sir, do you accept that the People's Republic of China is attempting to interfere in Canadian democracy?
I've seen reports about that. I personally haven't seen any evidence of it.
But this inquiry has heard evidence that CSIS believes Chinese state actors helped Han Dong win the 2019 Liberal nomination. The allegations center on a group of international students from China that were bused to the nomination meeting and told how to vote. On the stand, Dong was asked what he knew about that.
I didn't see them.
How many students were involved?
I don't remember. It's very vague.
Or who commissioned the bus?
I don't remember.
And yet, Dong informed the inquiry just yesterday that his wife paid for 2 buses, something he did not tell the inquiry when its lawyers interviewed him 6 weeks ago.
It's heavily redacted.
Indeed, a CSIS report tabled as evidence at the inquiry alleges the Chinese government orchestrated the plan to bus the students to the nomination because, again, according to CSIS, Dong was China's preferred candidate. That allegation has not been proven in court. But a declassified CSIS document entered as evidence at the inquiry says this is one key way China interferes in Canada's democracy, by supporting candidates they believe are sympathetic to Beijing. The declassified secret memo said China is, quote, our biggest concern. And it goes on to say the PRC, or People's Republic of China, is highly capable and motivated against Canada, and that their activities often transcend political party lines and may involve supporting many candidates who promote PRC views. Dong was also asked about a phone call he had with a Chinese diplomat about the 2 Michaels, then still in captivity in China. The inquiry's lawyers walked Dong through notes that CSIS made of a recording of that call. Dong was unable to answer specific questions about what he is alleged to have told the Chinese diplomat.
Well, it's possible. I mean, I don't recall saying that exactly, but it's possible.
David's with me now. David, what exactly was alleged in the CSIS document entered as evidence about the 2 Michaels?
Well, first of all, Donna, this CSIS summary has not been accepted as fact, and Commission Counsel noted that today, that these are still allegations. But the CSIS summary said that in that phone call, one of the points was Dong was making a partisan consideration surrounding the release of the 2 Michaels. And Dong observed that if the government of China released the 2 Michaels, quote, at that moment, end quote, it would give the opposition parties, or they would see it as proof of the usefulness of a hardline approach on China. Now, Dong has always said he was only ever thinking of the quickest way to release the 2 Michaels. And when Global News first reported on this conversation last year, Dong resigned from the Liberal caucus, and he still sits as an independent despite expressing a wish to rejoin the Liberals. Donna.
Okay, David Aiken in Ottawa, thank you. In Edmonton, an 11-year-old boy has been killed after being attacked by 2 large dogs. Police say they were called to a home last night where they found the severely injured boy. They attempted life-saving measures, but the boy was pronounced dead at the home. The 2 dogs were seized by animal control officers. It's believed they belong to a person who lives at the residence the boy was visiting. Troubling allegations from 2 Indigenous fishermen. Coming up, how they say federal fisheries officers mistreated them. In Nova Scotia, serious allegations from 2 Indigenous fishermen have Mi'kmaq chiefs calling for immediate action from federal fisheries and oceans. The men say fisheries officers left them at a gas station late at night without their shoes, cell phones, or a way to get home. They'd been apprehended for fishing for baby eels, a fishery that is closed this season. As Heidi Petrachik reports, the men say they were exercising their treaty right to fish.
Mi'kmaq voices drowned out Justin Trudeau's Halifax area housing announcement, angered by allegations of racism.
Obviously, this story is extremely troubling, which is why there is a need for a full investigation on this.
Earlier, Mi'kmaq supporters pushed into a fisheries office as tensions around the lucrative maritime Elver fishery, shut down by Ottawa this year, ramp up. Blaise Syllaboy and Kevin Hartling now at the center of it all, after they say they were arrested by fishery officers for exercising what they believe to be their treaty right to fish baby eels last week on Nova Scotia's South Shore. Instead of being taken to the nearby fisheries office, they say the officers took their boots and cell phones and stranded them at this gas station in the middle of the night.
When they left us with no shoes, I'm kind of devastated. I told him, man, this is outrageous. You're leaving me with no shoes. He said, you know the consequences.
Hours from home, the pair say they walked throughout the night looking for a hotel that was actually 66 kilometers away. Friends eventually found them at daylight at this convenience store.
Well, it reminds me of the Saskatchewan cases where the police were dropping the Indigenous people off late at night and they were dying. They were freezing to death.
The federal fisheries minister acknowledges an incident, quote, involving the arrest and release of 2 individuals and says DFO has launched an investigation. But after the men posted photos of their torn socks and blistered feet online, there's anger, and Mi'kmaq chiefs are calling for accountability.
The first thing we were looking for is for those individuals who are responsible to immediately be fired.
Chiefs throughout the province also want an emergency meeting with fisheries officials to talk about what they call an example of systemic racism. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia.
Packing a punch ahead, the dangerous storm system sweeping through the central U.S. There has been a school shooting in Finland. A 12-year-old is dead and 2 others are injured. Police say it happened inside a classroom, and the suspect, also 12, ran off. He was detained about 4 kilometers away. The shootings are being investigated as murder and attempted murder, and a national day of mourning will be observed in Finland tomorrow. In the U.S., tens of millions of people are under severe weather warnings as potentially dangerous storms roll through large swaths of that country. In the Midwest, a severe thunderstorm brought damaging winds and reports of at least 5 tornadoes. That triggered a state of emergency in Kentucky, where heavy damage has been reported. Thousands remain without power. Further south, heavy rain has led to flash flooding, forcing some people to be rescued from their homes. The National Weather Service says the threat of severe weather will remain overnight for millions of people in the central United States. Crews in Baltimore have now opened a second temporary channel, allowing limited maritime traffic to bypass the wreckage of last week's bridge collapse. Work is also underway to open a deeper third route for larger vessels. A timeline on its completion is not clear. Weather has slowed efforts to recover the bodies of 4 workers who were fixing potholes on the bridge when it collapsed. They're believed to be trapped under the bridge wreckage. Transcendent talent next, how Caitlin Clark is taking over college basketball.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Earl Cannonbear, along with Floyd Robertson here at Election Central. And Floyd, let's take a look at some of those returns.
Earl, the polls closed 3 minutes ago. There are no returns yet.
I feel ya. He could really nail some roles. That is comedian Joe Flaherty, spoofing the role of news anchor Floyd Robertson alongside Eugene Levy on SCTV. Flaherty has died at the age of 82 after a brief illness. He was a founding member of that fantastic Canadian sketch series and a staple in television comedies through the 80s and 90s. He also made people laugh on the big screen. One of his most recognizable roles was perhaps the heckler from Happy Gilmore.
Jackass. Whoa! The club went further than the ball.
On Instagram, Adam Sandler said today he worshipped Joe growing up, calling him a genius of a comedian and a true sweetheart. Well, March Madness is the biggest college basketball tournament in the world. It's only fitting the sport's biggest star is shining brighter than ever this month. Caitlin Clark is her name. She's a senior at the University of Iowa. Her jaw-dropping performances are drawing record-breaking crowds and TV ratings. Tickets for Clark's games are even selling for more than some men's games. Eric Sorensen looks at how she's becoming the face of college basketball.
Pity the play-by-play announcer looking for new ways to describe Caitlin Clark's basketball prowess. Maybe the best three-point shooter in the history of college basketball. Clark's all-around game has carried the University of Iowa to the Final Four for the second year in a row. For the coach she defeated Monday night,
she's just a generational player, and
She just makes everybody around her better.
She is selling out arenas, inspiring a new generation of fans who want to be like her.
We're excited to see Caitlin Clark.
Who do you want to be like when you get older?
Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark has broken so many scoring records. Last month, she topped Pete Maravich for career points, man or woman, in college basketball. She now has 3,900 points and counting. But she's also setting records in other ways, with audiences. Iowa's game in last year's championship was watched by almost 10 million viewers, double the previous year. Clark herself was reportedly offered $5 million to join Big Three, another basketball league. Is it all a distraction for her?
To be honest, I found out about the Big Three thing at the same exact time you all did. And my main focus is on just playing basketball. I think that's the biggest thing.
People are paying attention not only to women's basketball, to women's sports in general.
She can hardly accommodate all the autograph seekers, the cameras, the media questions.
Women's basketball has never seen to this extent in terms of also popularity tied with her talent, but they're also transcending sport viewership in many ways because of just how electrifying, how good the basketball is.
Caitlin Clark will turn professional this year, where she could give another boost to the WNBA. But first, she has a college championship to play for this weekend, and more people than ever will be watching. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
That is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is this bird's eye view of Calgary. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.